Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a potential historic blizzard that will be moving into the Great Lakes region, but its impacts will stretch as far from the northwest and into the northeast. So again, another coast to coast system. And I say historic because the last time we saw something similar in terms of its impacts and the potential danger that this thing poses, not only directly with the snow and its precipitation and its winds, but also the cold air directly following this, it's been at least probably at least half a decade, if not more. So 5 to 10 years ago, maybe we've seen a similar system of this magnitude and danger. So this is seriously a dangerous situation, and normally maybe this wouldn't be as bad if this was occurring in late January or February, but because this is occurring at possibly arguably the worst week of the year, Christmas week, a holiday week where everybody's traveling or travel is significantly higher than it normally would be, this thing makes itself even more dangerous and impactful. So truly a incredible system, a historic potential, a blizzard, and I will start getting into this right away because again, the impacts are prolific, and we are nearing this. We are less than 3 days away from this thing really reaching its full potential, and less than a day or two from reaching the northwestern United States. So as I mentioned, this thing is going to start off across the northwestern United States. Notice currently across the radar of the United States, what we do have is, again, we have the snow beginning to move in across southwestern Canada. You can see Washington, Oregon, and because of how cold it will be, cities like Seattle, so coastal cities that typically don't really see snow out of events like this, events that typically bring snow into the mountains, but usually rain elsewhere, like Seattle. This time around, you can see there's a winter storm warning in the city itself, and if we click on it, you can see what we see. I am a little bit zoomed in here, so I do apologize. Let's zoom out. Notice that we have a winter storm warning, 1 to 3 inches tonight, 1 to 3 inches tomorrow, so potentially up to 6 inches of snow across Seattle itself. So if you live across the northwest, don't be caught off guard by that. Let's start taking a look at the modeling data. So let's take a look at the northwestern United States, and again, since this thing is not that terribly far out, we could start using a high resolution model, right? So again, zoom in on the northwestern region, and you can see that right here, what we do have going on is, again, as you saw on the radar, precipitation beginning to move in. By 8 tonight, 9, 10, you can see it's becoming more profound, reaching areas like the Bitterroots across Idaho with some light to moderate snowfall. Nothing too intense yet. Most of it hitting cities like Vancouver, also getting impacted by this, in British Columbia, and into Washington itself. Notice Seattle, it's gonna be so cold that, again, typically areas that don't see that snow will be seeing snow. Just a little bit of rain near the coastal areas. Notice into British Columbia, much of southern British Columbia, now into Alberta, Canada, south of Calgary. So you won't really be seeing snowfall if you live in Calgary and you're watching this video. Do note though, across Montana, we see that snow pick up through the day tomorrow into 1 p.m. This is now 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see by the tomorrow late in the evening, so really around the time, late afternoon, early evening hours, by the time you're watching this maybe, or by the time I'm uploading a new video tomorrow at this similar time frame, around 6 p.m., snow will be gone from much of southwestern Canada and from cities like Seattle and the coastal areas of Washington, northwestern Washington, but still going on across Montana. Some of these snowfall rates will be pretty heavy falling, and again, because of how cold it is, a lot of these areas won't have troubles with that accumulation. Obviously, there will be some rain across northern California, but that's more typical of what you normally see there. Notice Idaho, we're also seeing that snowfall, as I mentioned. It's going to only move out of Idaho by really late Tuesday night. Do note that into even early Wednesday, we see Montana getting in on this, into the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, and this thing finally starts to completely exit by the time we get towards that 50-60 hour time frame. You can see at hour 48, so 12 p.m. Wednesday, it's still snowing across Wyoming, but for the most part, it is all said and done. Again, if we take a look at the total snowfall, you can see pretty significant, especially initially where this thing makes landfall, if you will. You can see up to 2 feet of snow across the Cascades, and again, Seattle, according to this model, it shows, I think, 4 or 5 inches. Again, the potential of up to 6-7 inches is possible, even across the downtown areas. So that's obviously impactful. Portland, you're not going to see snow out of this across Oregon. It's mainly a Washington event in terms of those lower elevated cities seeing that snowfall. Notice Idaho picking up quite a bit, northwestern Montana, and in a widespread 3 to 4 inch amount across the plains of Montana, if you will. These amounts will be slightly higher because it's occurring in very cold conditions, so you could multiply these actually by 2 because of the snowfall ratio here is being assumed at 10 to 1. This will be realistically closer towards a 20 to 1. Notice across the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, we also pick up a decent bit of snow. Nothing incredible for these areas that, typically see events that sometimes are several feet, but it's still something that we have to address. Again, as I was mentioning, a lot of the snow falling across further east, especially across Montana, will be falling in very cold conditions. So if the HER model shows 3 to 4 inches, you click on Glasgow, just southwest there, you could see you have a wind chill warning indicating there's going to be very cold there. It's already -9 Fahrenheit. So again, this snow will be extremely fluffy, which is why I would not expect, if there will be the same amount of precipitation that the HER forecasts, 3 to 4 inches, assuming a 10 to 1, you can multiply that by 2, 2.5 even. Again, same amount of precip, just the snow, because it's fluffier, will have more air in between it because it's colder, as opposed to heavier, wetter snow when, it's like 30, 32 degrees marginally colder. So I will just show the Northwest, that one model. I don't want to show you anymore because, well, thankfully we have the HER model that goes out to 48 hours, and there really isn't that much disagreement amongst the models. So again, obviously for more up-to-date details, go to your local National Weather Service if you live across the Northwest. Let's move on now towards the Southwestern United States, as this is another area that will be impacted by this, albeit probably the least out of every single region across the United States that I'll be talking about. Even the Northwest will have greater impacts, which again, as you saw, are there, but they're not huge. Let's go back to this map using the HER model and click on the Southwestern United States and start from hour 1, but let's go back and turn on this range/frozen. So again, through the rest of tonight and into the evening hours, really nothing going on. Maybe some light showers, some light drizzle hitting Northern California. I think I might have said Carolina earlier as well. I don't know why I say that, but I guess it sound a little bit similar there. Notice that we could start seeing a little bit of rain, again, more consistent rain pushing into Northern California and Southern Oregon by tomorrow later in the day. Again, early morning hours mainly fine as well, but by the time you get towards noon and evening, you can see that rain and snow really starting to intensify towards cities like cities like Eugene, maybe getting a little bit of rain there, and into potentially Reno, Nevada, getting a little bit of precipitation. You can see more of a rain-snow mix. Still predominantly snow across Nevada. Again, you can see Peters out towards as it gets further south, going through California, and then the Wasatch picking up a little bit of snow. Again, nothing too incredible. And stopping at hour 48, you can see this is what it looks like in terms of total snowfall. This is what could fall through just 48 hours. However, because the Southwest is a little bit further away from this system, I want to show you the other model that goes a bit beyond 48, because cities or states of Colorado and Wyoming will get the brunt of this, if you will, past hours of the 48 that the HER goes out to, which I was showing you. So using the GFS, you can see up until then, again, pretty good agreements showing that snow and rain across Nevada, Oregon, California, Utah, and then you can see it sweeps down through Wyoming. So cities like Cheyenne, you'll be getting a nice little dusting of snow there, dusting, few inches, let's just say. Denver, you'll pick up a little bit of snow. So if there isn't snow in Denver right now, which I don't believe there is, maybe there is, you'll get some snow just in time for Christmas too. Potentially produce a nice little white Christmas there. So by the time all things are said and done from this system alone, and by the way, for folks across the Northwest and Southwest, there will be a lot more activity even before Christmas time comes. December 23rd, December 24th. So while that monster, the historic part of the system is occurring across the Midwest and Northeast and Southeastern Canada, you'll be impacted by more systems, arguably more impactful than this little guy, because again, this system, this blizzard, has humble beginnings. As I take a look at the total snowfall from this first system, you can see there is additional snow across the Wasatch, Grand Tetons, and into the Colorado Rockies. Nothing incredible, but a general swath of several inches across the lower elevations, and maybe 3 to 5, maybe even up towards a foot or more across the higher elevations, especially since there will be very, very cold air associated with this, so the snow will be falling at slightly higher ratios. If we take a look at, say, maybe places like Vail, so a pretty nice area that usually has a lot of tourists during, especially the winter time. You have a wind chill watch. Nothing in terms of the warnings, or in terms of, advisories or warnings for the snow, because again, for these areas, the snow that will be falling will amount to several inches at least, but for these areas, that's really not that impressive. So that is that. However, Now, as we get towards the different portion of the United States and we start looking at the north central United States, this is where things really start getting interesting and models start diverting. So I'll be showing you both the GFS and the European and what the National Weather Service thinks. As of now, there is a little event of snow going on across Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. There will be some snow through tonight. It's nothing incredible. We're at 1 to 2, 3 inches, very plowable and very light and fluffy. The main concern starts showing up as early Wednesday morning and afternoon across the Dakotas into Minnesota again. The snow you can see actually relatively heavy, especially for how dry this air mass is and how cold. This snow will have no problem accumulating, and there actually could be up to even a foot of snow across cities like Minneapolis itself because of how little moisture is needed to create that fluffiness of that snow. So if you take a look at, as we play this forward, notice that we start seeing this thing dive down towards the south. So states like Nebraska, you'll be under that snow. Kansas, where the models really start disagreeing. Again, I'm showing you the GFS, but I'll start pointing out some of the differences that the models have. Where the models really start disagreeing is across how far south the snow will go. You can see GFS showing snow up here. That's most likely supported by the European as well. But further south, it gets a little bit more tricky. So I'll focus on that in just a little bit. But notice that through early Thursday, we start seeing this thing spread into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri. And the snow really picks up in intensity, especially across the southern areas here. Notice this thing becomes negatively tilted as it approaches Illinois, Indiana. Some areas may start here as rain. The temperatures will be marginally freezing around 32, but quickly the temperatures plummet. Notice at this point in time, so through the day Thursday, obviously conditions will be deteriorating across Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, but the system is still relatively weak. It's at 1,008 millibars. That is nothing incredible. That is a standard low pressure that isn't really considered strong. It's probably closer to being weak than even medium strength. Notice though that within a couple of hours this thing explodes and it undergoes a process called bombogenesis when it drops 1 millibar of pressure for at least 24 hours every hour, right? So, and it will definitely meet the criteria here. Notice it goes from 1,000 here at 6 p.m. Thursday, where the blizzard conditions really start setting up because we have an incredibly powerful high pressure that's driving all this barbaric cold air to the south that is meeting with this low pressure, and you can see these millibars, these isobars here really tighten very quickly, and you can see that right there within 6 hours this thing drops 11 millibars, and then it drops even more. You can see 982, 979. Very quick development of this storm, and notice that the winds really strengthen. At this point, the winds are going to be howling 40 to 50 miles per hour, gusts of up to 60 if not 70. Snowfall rates are really going to be picking up, and again, with such strong winds, the main concern is, well, there could be power outages. If you lose power, you can't get heat, the cold air moves in. This could really turn into a pretty dangerous and life-threatening event pretty quickly. And interestingly enough, if you look at the National Weather Service forecast discussion, the main thing they're concerned about is not necessarily, whether or not you look at 6 inches of more snow here or there, because once the snow starts falling, what you can see, most of these areas, even if they start off as rain, cities like Indianapolis, St. Louis, you will get some snow at one point. The cold air and the strength of these winds will create blizzard conditions, which could create seriously life-threatening conditions. Obviously, if you get a lot of snow further north, especially across, Illinois, Indiana, southern Michigan, right there, that will obviously be exaggerated. And you can see that this thing, according to the GFS, by early Saturday is already at 964 millibars, which is similar to a strength, a category 2, borderline 3 would have in terms of just millibars. So if we were to take a glance, or in terms of its low pressure rating, in terms of the total snowfall, I'm not even going to show you the 10 to 1. Actually, I will, just for you guys to learn something here, if you did not know this already. So again, assuming a 10 to 1 ratio, that assumes that the snowfall is occurring at around maybe 28 degrees. This snowfall obviously won't be, especially across Minnesota, Wisconsin. It will be occurring at more at a 15 degrees, maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even negative Fahrenheit. So that will increase the snowfall rate to 20, maybe even 30 to 1, meaning that you could take some of these amounts, especially up here, and really multiply that by 3, right? So here, instead of seeing 3, you could see 9. Obviously, the same amount of precip is falling, but it's just the fluffiness of it that differs. So this is why I want to show you the GFS Kuchera estimate on this model website that allows us, the Kuchera allows that snowfall ratio to be adjusted. And you can see the amounts quickly grow, and you can see why Minneapolis, Des Moines, much of Wisconsin could easily see it over a foot. And the areas where that snow falls heavily and heavier, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, you can see snowfall rates of potentially our snowfall ratios of, again, potentially up to 20 to 1, so you can see up to 20, maybe even 30 inches of snow in some areas. Now, this is the GFS, so notice Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, you're getting in on this snow as well. However, there's still some differences. Obviously, the GFS has significantly adjusted its track, and it's very similar to the European model now, but there still are some differences. Notice the European, which again I do think is a better model, better scenario for this system. It's more accurate even at this point in time. Shows very similar early on. You can see that snow spreading across the north. What it does do differently though is you can see a little bit less snow through Kansas, Missouri. Still there, it's still significant. So if you live across Kansas City, don't worry, you're gonna still see snowfall. May not be as much, but it's really gonna still be, at least a good plausible event. You might not see a few inches more or less here and there, but it's just a little bit further south or a little bit less. And you can see that cities or states like Arkansas really don't get in on this. Into Tennessee, Kentucky, they get in on this, but not as much as what the GFS shows. Obviously, for the north, the European keeps things pretty similar to the GFS. It shows, again, a pretty wild system, and you can see that snowfall rate and those winds and the temperature is really, really incredible. Again, if you take a look at the flawed snowfall ratios of assuming incorrectly a 10-to-1 ratio, you can see that the snowfall may not look awfully that impressive, and it really won't be if this was the case, or it wouldn't be if this was the case. Well, it still would be across some areas, but if you take a look at the adjusted, so let's take a look now at the European, the Kuchera ratios, which is, again, is the correct estimations. You can see, we quickly see Kansas City going from 4 inches on that website, or, yeah, assuming the 10-to-1 ratio here, maybe 4 or 5 inches to realistically probably closer to 10 because of how cold it will be. Minneapolis getting, again, maybe close to a foot. Northern Wisconsin well over a foot, maybe 2 feet. Again, Illinois, Indiana, these areas. Indianapolis 7 inches. You can see these little numbers. They're hard to see, but basically, again, you don't need the exact numbers here because this will change. So just look at that, and if you see purples, that's above 6 inches and whatnot. So that is that, and this is why some of these snowfall rates will be a lot higher. Michigan, look at Michigan, 15 inches, 7 inches, a lot more, a little bit of a range there because there will be some more mixing going on there, but it's a lot more significant. So let me go back now and show you the European and kind of try timing this out a little bit more for you guys across the north central United States. So again, some areas like Indiana, Ohio, you will see a little bit more of that, that rainfall initially if the European model comes true, which again at this point there will be a less degree of change than say from potentially yesterday. And you can see it starts off as snow, but eventually because of how this blizzard kind of works in on itself, there will be some snow on the backside, and that will still accumulate, and you can see it kind of slows down this system folding in on itself. So Michigan, while you may start off with the rain, especially cities like Detroit, you still will get in on a decent amount of snow, and you could be left with again, according to the European, potentially even up to 6 to 10 inches of snow, which is still a very good event for you guys. So that is something I also want to address across those areas. Now, that is basically what I wanted to show you. Obviously, the National Weather Service is already beginning to post watches. These will probably continue to expand, especially as we get more concise information across where that rain/snow transition occurs. Here, it's a bit more clear that snow transition will be not as tricky, and they have more confidence in, which is why they already posted those winter storm watches. So notice right now we are seeing a little bit of snow across Des Moines with that first system, but notice they already have a winter storm watch posted. And looking at the European model again from this perspective, assuming that 10-to-1 ratio, you could see it shows maybe 5 inches. So okay, the National Weather Service won't show more than 5 inches, right? Well, that's wrong. You could see it shows 2 to 4 just through Wednesday night, and Thursday would be where the bulk of the snow falls into Thursday night. So again, up to 5 to 10 inches of snow is possible. And in the winter storm watch, I believe they are calling for that for that kind of a snowfall in that range. And again, they've also been kind of, because this is so far out still, they decided to kind of not really include a lot of these watches with snowfall, but some counties do. This one I think doesn't, but that's the thing with the National Weather Service. Because of how dangerous this is, they decided to post these watches a little bit ahead of when they normally would have. Let's move on towards the South Central United States area and start focusing on those states, because this is another area that its impacts won't be as significant from the snow. The cold will, but it's also a little bit more tricky, because if you look at models like the GFS, again, the next few days, this is still good. And this is, if you're worrying, across Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, you really, again, you could see Oklahoma, you're still good even into Thursday, but by Kansas, Nebraska, by early Thursday, you're in on this snow. Again, it's going to start off pretty light, and you can see the GFS. According to the GFS, the snow moves in, avoids most of Oklahoma City, though there will be some snow across, say, Tulsa, Wichita, further north into the Ozarks. There will be a little bit of snow you can see through the day on Thursday, and by the time this is really Thursday night and into Friday, this moves through Arkansas, Mississippi, according to the GFS, into Tennessee and Kentucky, and it's done by early Friday morning, but you're left with a ton of cold air, so at least prepare for the cold air. Again, according to the GFS, well, let's go to the Kuchera ratio, because again, these are the more accurate snowfall ratios because of how cold this will be. Assuming a 10-to-1 ratio is not good, so again, Kuchera temp profile ratio is more accurate, and you can see that the GFS does show that snow across Kansas, again, a little bit into Oklahoma, nothing too severe, and again, so this is going to be mainly avoiding these southern states here. If you're looking at this map and you're outside of the blue here across the south, you're most likely not going to be concerned with a heavy snowfall event. It's going to be a much lighter snowfall event. However, there's some differences. We have a model like the European, which in terms of its perspective, again, very similar timing, so mainly if the snow does occur, and again, I'm assuming those Kuchera ratios, if that snowfall does occur, it will be you can see at a similar time frame Thursday, done by Friday, but you can see that the snow that does occur is also relatively further towards the north than what we were, potentially showing just a few days ago, but it's more in line with the GFS still. But you can see across Kansas, against southern Missouri, those snowfall amounts are pretty significant. One thing that the models are all agreeing on across these areas, or across this area, is the extreme cold air. So let me just show you some of these ridiculous temperatures that could be moving into your area using the 2-meter temperature shaded here. So again, you can see those little numbers, 30s, 40s, right? So here's a timeline, December 20th at 12 p.m. So this is now early Wednesday. Again, Wednesday is still predominantly pretty warm, but look at that. Some areas will be literally going from 40, 50 degrees across Oklahoma early Thursday to by the end of the day, you're in almost negative Fahrenheit. So, and this doesn't stop by the Gulf Coast. Notice, Dallas right there, or sorry, Houston, you're in the 60s on late Thursday. And again, by the time this thing blows through, you are well into the 20s. Frost freezes are all there. And again, further north, this thing is even more expansive. So very cold air moving in behind this. That is another story across the north central United States. That is also going to be a very big concern, obviously, where it is colder. So again, that is that for the south central United States. Still a little bit of details to be determined here. In terms of severe weather, there isn't really going to be anything big, so no worries in terms of that. But again, the biggest threat is that little bit of snow, especially across the the northern part of this region, and then that cold air that moves in behind that. Let's move on out towards the northeast, as this is again where we start seeing some really chaotic weather with this blizzard, making this even harder. So again, for the next few days into Wednesday, you're fine. Maybe even into Thursday, you're going to be generally dry, especially the further north and east you go. But notice, because of how this system's oriented, there will be a little bit of snow at first across the areas, where that cold air is more stubborn, quickly changes over to rain. But because of how quick the cold air is sweeping in behind this system, we will see a lot of this rain transition over to snow. So if you live across central Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, you will start off as a little bit of rain, and that is almost a certainty, right? But notice you transition over to snow. The northeast, you'll have a longer period of rain, but even some of the coastal cities may get in on that snowfall. But the further inland you are, closer to the Canadian border, you're going to have a better chance of seeing that snowfall. Notice the southern Canadian cities, up and all along the St. Lawrence River Valley, right? You will be seeing rain at first, followed by again that changeover to potentially a very, very significant thud of snow. And because of how a series of low pressures there could be a second one that develops. The first one could kind of peter out, and then the second one develops. There's going to be several areas of circulation with this. So basically what we're looking at is potentially that snow, once it transitions and catches up with that rain, kind of sticking around for a little bit longer than it typically would. And you can see that obviously some extremely heavy snowfall amounts here. So it's going to be a little bit of a mess, as you can see clearly. We have areas up to the north seeing snow, then rain, sandwich between that snow. But in terms of timing, again, Thursday evening moving in, this is what it looks like 6 p.m. Thursday. This is midnight into Friday. early Friday morning. This is now Friday in the afternoon. This is now Friday around the evening time frame. And this is now Saturday during the early morning hours. So mainly done and very cold across the mid-Atlantic here northeast, but still snowing and raining across southeastern Canada through the day on Saturday. And then it's mainly done. In terms of the total rainfall, it will be pretty significant across the coastal areas. Again, some of this will be obviously falling as snow as well. So the total snowfall you could see, again, pretty significant. Some of this here, especially here, may be a bit more accurate, assuming the 10-to-1 ratio, because it will be a wetter, sloppier snow. Further back here across Ohio, Kentucky, these amounts will be higher because it will be colder. So let's take a look at the Kuchera temp profile ratio, which it kind of incorporates that cold, that warmth, and gives us a more accurate snowfall reading. Notice across Ohio, Indiana, and again, I'm showing you the European amounts here. I'll show you the GFS in just a second. I do believe the European has more accurate snowfall readings, though. Notice still potentially up to 6 inches across northern Ohio, even several inches as far south as Kentucky. New York City, the coastal areas, you may get a little brief sprinkle of snow, if you will, but it won't be anything significant. But notice southern Canadian cities, especially north of the river, you will be seeing, or just the areas north of the river, you'll be seeing some pretty significant snow. Toronto also some significant snow, despite you're going to be starting off as rain initially. GFS, so this is again the model. I was kind of timing this out for you, showing, you could see, assuming the Kuchera ratio, you're showing pretty good amounts as well, especially across the Pennsylvania, West Virginia here area. We can see it shows that snow as far south into Tennessee. It's definitely a possibility. You don't want to get too hung up on these snowfall forecasts yet, as it is a little bit far out, but I'm trying to outline for you the areas that are more at risk of seeing this very heavy snowfall. And do notice that again, the European, which I didn't show you yet in terms of its tracking out of this precipitation. I showed you the amounts it showed. It was that first one I showed you for the northeast. But notice again, using this nationwide view, you have this whole scope of how this thing kind of, again, that first low pressure, you can see right there, kind of collapses in on itself, if you will, really pivots in, so it really starts slowing down. It's going to be still very strong, and you can see again all that rain. Again, maybe a little bit of snow at the beginning for some of these areas, but mainly rain, and then that cold air catching up behind it. Look at that little swivel right there, catches in on itself, and that produces a lot of snow, potentially on the backside of that thing, and especially as it pivots away. So especially if you cross central Ontario into Quebec, the amounts of snow you can see up here further north are going to be potentially legendary. So that is also something to note of. That is mainly it for the Northeast, though. Again, you know, I can only spend a few minutes on your region without going completely overboard in terms of time. So obviously, for more details, go to your local National Weather Service office, as I can't provide you enough information on this. I could give you a brief outline, you know, telling you the coastal areas won't be seeing snowfall, mainly rainfall. There will be a little bit of snow on the backside of this, and everyone will get cold air behind this system, which I'm going to show you right now. But for the exact details on your county and whether or not that snow will start and, you know, when it will begin, go to your local National Weather Service. Just type in weather.gov and find it. Notice on this map, you can clearly see where that low pressure is situated. Tons of cold air on the backside, tons of warm air on the front side of this thing, and you can see that by the time, you know, it's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, all this cold air moves into the Northeast. Not as significant as across the Midwest, as you will see some of these Great Lakes here sheltering some of that cold air, and that is predominantly because, well, warmer waters create kind of this barrier, physical barrier, and also the positioning of this Arctic air mass is kind of going to be avoiding the Northeast here. I want to take a look at the 2 meter temperature shaded, because the contrast that could occur here is pretty incredible. I mean, take for example right here, central Pennsylvania, you could be in the 50s on early Friday, right? Looking like a nice, fairly nice day, right? No, by the time it's that same day, Friday, 6 p.m., you're looking at 3 degrees, 5 degrees. So a 50, 60 degree drop at least across some of these areas, if not more. But notice even New York City getting into the lower teens by the time this is all said and done. So yeah, there's no one's escaping the cold. Some are escaping the snow, but many are not. Let's go to the southeastern United States, as this is another area where we have a little bit of chaos and a little bit of confusion in terms of the forecasting, but it's still going to be relatively unscathed in terms of that snow predominantly. Notice the next few hours we are seeing a little bit of rain. This will be mainly done by early Wednesday morning as it pushes out from Florida. There could be some severe weather there on Wednesday, but mainly a heavy rain event. Notice out on Thursday, because of how far north the system is, no real sign of snow here. A lot of rain, though, developing across the southeastern states here into early Thursday and throughout the day on Thursday. By 6 p.m. Thursday and into early Friday, we do see some of that snow potentially tailing into Tennessee, Kentucky. Again, I don't think it's going to be as expansive as what the GFS shows here, but there will be a definite drop in temperatures, and that precipitation will move out. There could be a little bit of snow behind this, but again, the southeast, unfortunately for the snow lovers, this is mainly going to be a bust in terms of the snowfall. It's not really going to produce much across Kentucky, West Virginia, maybe, but mainly rain further south, and you can see that some of the rainfall amounts are going to be pretty significant on top of the stuff that is falling right now across the southeast. If you look at the if you take a look at the model viewer, so this is again a GFS, the same model I showed you, but assuming appropriate Kuchera temp profile ratio. So it shows quite a bit of snow for Virginia, northern Virginia here into the Carolinas. It doesn't show much across Tennessee, and again, I don't think there will be much there. And if you take a look at the model like the European, it also is pretty in agreement with the GFS and shows even less snow for Tennessee and the Virginias. You can see North Virginia and West Virginia really not see a lot compared to what the GFS shows. And again, I'll lean towards the European at this point. So that's the probably realistic scenario for the southeast. Not much snow, a little bit of rain, but the bigger news story probably that will be very noticeable will be the cold air behind us. And you can see that across the southeast. It's going to be very warm at first, but then that cold air just blasts through, and some of these anomalies are going to be incredible. So let me go to the thermometer reading here and show you this, because some of this may catch a little bit of you viewers here off guard. Notice the day before, Thursday, Florida in the 70s, the southeast 40s, baking in the 50s, Savannah, Georgia, they're around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And by the time this front moves in, so again, we're going from 60 degrees there on Friday in Florida through Thursday. A few hours later, intervals later, you can see the frost getting well into potentially southern Florida, 20 single digits further north. Incredible cold. Pretty much every single city will get in on this. New Orleans, Houston, up and along the Carolinas, the Outer Banks. Everyone will get in on this cold air. It doesn't last too long, but for Christmas Day it will be a very cold one, so at least we'll kind of feel Christmassy, if you will, from that cold perspective. But later on, you can see things warm up pretty quickly, and within a few days after that storm, we could be looking at 70s in the same areas that are dealing with potentially single digits. So that's the southeast for you there, rebounding pretty quickly. Let me go back now and give you guys a brief overview. I won't spend too much time on this because due to the fact that, well, simply we don't want to go to, this video is already getting long, and I do want to show you overall just the cold mass of air and how incredible this is, and really how this kind of plays into the system that makes it so incredible. So notice again, a lot of that rain that will be changing over to snow is because of, you can see how this cold air rushes in because of how strong the winds will be from this blizzard across the Midwest here. The winds will be fiercely shoving this snow or this cold air over into this rain, and that will, obviously you can see that contrast again, that it's just absolutely chasing that warm air out of here, that cold air, and that will obviously be producing some of that snowfall that typically wouldn't necessarily be converted over into rain or into snow. But you can see that some of these temperature anomalies are incredible, especially where the snowfall falls, and you can see that Saturday, New Year's Eve into Christmas Day, this thing is really cold. The 25th of December at 6 a.m. here, very, very cold. Notice the west starts rebounding pretty quickly, and that eventually actually leads to this northern central United States getting in on some warmer air. The models are into agreement, with how this plays out. The European stays a bit cooler, GFS a bit warmer. Both are possible scenarios, but again, while that map may look all nice and very warm, realistically it's going to be 40s, 50s if you're lucky, because, well, we're in December, early January at that point. So, no heat waves, but you can see some of this cold air in terms of temperature readings. Look at that. And because of how strong the winds are, the wind chills are going to be definitely more concerning than the actual maybe the temperature readings themselves. The National Weather Service obviously even already has wind chill watches for Texas across these areas, and you can see negative 18 feels like temperature. So it's going to be brutal across these areas. It's going to wick away any body temperature warmth that your body will produce. So there could be some negative 50 wind chills across the Dakotas here. So truly the cold by itself could be life-threatening. Combined with that wind and snow across the north central United States here will be life-threatening. So that is that, guys. Again, for more official information, please go to your local National Weather Service office, as that is where they will have the best information for you guys. And that is basically it for today's video. That's all I have for you. And again, I will be making videos into tomorrow and pretty much until the system passes away. But for today, this is all I have for you. And again, just take a look at some of these snowfall amounts across these areas. They could be pretty significant, so don't get caught off guard. Again, potentially historic system. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.